3, 2. What's up, everybody? It's Oz, the host of the Atheist Roundtable, now I think better known as TART, and we appreciate you stopping by, checking us out. I just wanted to take a minute and say thank you to our viewers, our subscribers, our patrons, our members of the YouTube channel. What you guys do for us and the amount of support and love that you guys give us, we just want to say thank you. So what I want to do is ask you to either shoot a short video. If you're not comfortable with a video, you can put it in a text form or an email form. You can send the email or the video to austin@tart.live. And we want to start using that on the YouTube channel, on our website, other social media accounts. And we want you and your story to be out there too, and we want to promote that. So again, shoot a quick video, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And what I'd like to hear is, how did you find TART? Did you stumble upon it? Did somebody tell you about it? And what has it meant to you and your story, your journey, if anything at all? Or maybe you just watch because we're a bunch of knuckleheads that love to have fun, and you love to have fun with us. It could be as simple as that too. So I'd love to hear from you. And until we go live next time, we'll catch you guys later. Here's looking at you, kid. You and you and you. What's up, Tartians? And that was terrible. Let's do that again. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Atheist Roundtable. It's a TART Live show, another edition. It's Oz, your host, and I have an amazing guest with us tonight. I've been looking forward to this chop-up session and getting into it with the one and only Dave Warnock. Dave, thanks for being with us here at TART tonight. How are you?
Hey, Oz, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. And before we get into the good stuff here, get into the questions, I did want to plug. We do have not an interview, a debate tomorrow night on the 10 Commandments. Randolph and Gavin will be squaring off here at the TART debate night, and I'm looking forward to that. That's kind of round 2 for them. The backdrop of that being is God the moral monster from a month or two ago. So check us out tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're gonna have some fun. So Dave, thanks again for being with us. And anybody and everybody that doesn't know Dave by now, you should. So real quick, Dave, where can they find you on the interwebs, and what do you got going on?
Yeah, my thing is called Dying Out Loud. I think most people probably know that. Well, if you don't, that's what we call the thing I've been doing for the last 1.5, 2 years. And you can find all the links to my stuff at daveoutloud.com. Used to have a thing called a travel schedule on there when we were actually traveling. Prior to COVID, the pandemic hoax that everybody's talking about, prior to that, we were doing a lot of traveling and speaking at secular communities and things like that around the country. All that got shut down, so now we do as many of these kind of shows as we can, and that's the best we can do with the conditions we have right now. But glad to do these because I love connecting with the people. Yeah,
yep, same here. So I guess think they're God for the interwebs, right? Providing a means. So Dave, let's just jump into it if you don't mind. And what I would like to do first, take us back to little Dave. What did life look like for little Dave growing up?
Little Dave was always in trouble. I'm actually, it's interesting because I'm writing my memoir right now, and I've been really writing a lot in the last month or so every day, and hoping to have the book done by late spring, early summer. And so, yeah, I've been revisiting a lot of that. And I grew up in a non-Christian house, and so I came to the Lord, was saved, and some of you people will know what this means, baptized in the Holy Spirit
Oh yeah.
at the age of 18, soon after graduating high school. And from then on until my mid 50s, I was a charismatic, Bible believing, tongue speaking Christian. Many of those years in full time ministry as associate pastors and so on. So I had a long career, if you will, as a committed Christian, and only came to the conclusion late in life that it wasn't true after 36, 37 years of giving it everything I had.
Okay, so you said little Dave got in a lot of trouble. I would then assume, but I don't like making assumptions, that probably teenage Dave got in even more trouble. Is that?
Well, I was a late bloomer. I got into as much trouble as I could, but I was always afraid to, I never did drugs. I never smoked pot until I was in my 60s.
Okay.
So if that'll give you an idea. When I got into trouble, I say I was mischievous. I was the middle of three boys. And then, of course, that, you know what that means. And so my parents divorced when I was 8. My mom remarried when I was 10. My stepdad was a good dad, and so he raised us. And then I had a half sister come on the scene. As a teenager, I was just, pretty normal guy. Just didn't do a lot. Like I said, didn't do drugs, but I drank as much any chance I got. And then, but by the age of 18, I'd committed my life to the Lord, so I didn't get any trouble after that.
Okay.
So to speak of.
So then at 18, and I think it's interesting that that happened at 18, walking into adulthood.
Yeah.
Most people are like, oh man, it's adult time. I'm going to go do what I think at 18 is adult shit. So at 18, what was it that convinced you at that time that that God was real and caused you to make a decision to be a faithful Christian?
Well, I was influenced a lot by my older brother. He had gone to college a year before me, and he'd gotten saved in the Jesus movement, which was sweeping the country in the early 70s. This was way back in, I'm an old fart, so this was back in 1972, 73. And it came on the heels of the hippie movement. So the Jesus movement was basically hippies who were saved. And I just got caught up in kind of his coattails and was influenced by him. I was really at a stage in life. I didn't have a lot of direction. I was going to go to college, but I didn't have a good plan on how to do that, and didn't have good direction from my parents. And so I was very vulnerable and in many ways insecure, looking for some answers. And so this Jesus comes along with all the answers, and you just read this book. It's the instruction manual, follow along, and everything's taken care of. And I bought into it full board. I never asked I never examined it. Is this true? Let me compare it with all the other religions. I didn't never do that. And so I just kind of jumped in and went on my very way with it, and just followed along as though it was, of course, the right thing to do. And 36, 37 years later, I realized, oh shit, I was wrong. And you mentioned, looking back, I really realized I missed those years, my 20s. I kind of lived my 20s in my 60s. I just never got a chance to develop and grow up into my manhood. And arrested development is the way I put it. And the working title of my book, I'm going to call it, and you might recognize this scriptural reference. The title of the book is probably going to be "But When I Became a Man."
Yep.
Do you know what scripture that refers to?
Absolutely.
Share with our viewers.
Put the childish things away. That one.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So at 18, before we move from there, I always like to ask this when, especially when people made their decision for faith at an age that they can, usually remember. Because like for me, I grew up in it. so it's kind of like, yeah, I remember saying that, but it's also like, that's all I knew,
Yeah.
What was, I know you mentioned there's influences there, but was it a feeling? Was it an experience? Were you at like a church service or like a church camp type atmosphere? Like what happened?
It was the night after Christmas in 1973, December 26th, at about 9:20 p.m. when I was born again. My brother was in town for Christmas break. He had been away at college. He had dropped out of college. He was a preacher by then. He was just traveling around preaching. And somehow he was in town, and I guess these Christians had radar, and so he was able to connect with other Christians in this town. It was out in a small town in West Texas called Pampa, in the panhandle of Texas, the absolute worst part of the country you could possibly live in. And so I went with him to this young people's gathering. I wouldn't even call it a Bible study because it was just more like it was in this regular home of these young these adults who were kind of the leaders of the group, and there were like 40 kids, young people between the ages of maybe 17 and 20, 22, packed into this home, and it was just a wild, enthusiastic scene, and it felt like they've got something I don't have. And so when they invited me to pray to receive the Holy Spirit, I said, yeah, let me get some of this. This is like, these guys are all on drugs and I don't have any, and I want it. So I was very much impressed by this experience, I will say, that looked fun and looked like something I could latch onto, because I really didn't have something to latch onto at that point in my life.
Okay, no, it makes perfect sense. So 18, you give your life to God, and you run full steam ahead, and eventually, Dave, you end up find yourself in the ministry. So you go from 18, not knowing God, to having a relationship with God. And how did it go from that to now you want to be a minister?
Well, it was kind of like I felt like I was drafted into it. I early on, and it's interesting, as I've been writing my book, things come back to me. I'll be writing through a portion of a stage of my life, and I'll remember conversations. I'll remember prophetic utterances, prophecies given over me. And looking back on it, I now see that this was just my gregarious personality and my charm and wit, if you will. Whatever it is about me that makes me, people are kind of like, they started telling me that I had a call on my life, that they could see me as a pastor, and God's got an anointing on you. And all it was that I just like to talk, and I was just a loudmouth, and I felt like I had more to say than anyone else, and so they told me that was the Spirit of God. And so I never went to seminary. I never got any kind of degrees. I never even spent a day in college in my life. I'm an uneducated Arkansas hillbilly, and so I just went with that, and I thought, well, maybe I am called, and maybe God has anointed me. And so over time, that just became where I got put on staff at different parts of my life. I was on staff at churches as an associate pastor, and I was a full-time minister. I got my license. I was ordained, not by any hierarchy, because in the charismatic movement, you didn't need any of that.
Nope.
You needed to be called by God. So I'd be, the elders would lay hands on me, and voila, I'm a pastor. And I would counsel people, do all kinds of biblical counseling that I wish I could take back, and start all kinds of bullshit that I thought was God's wisdom. But I was doing the best I could, and I thought it was God. I thought it was good. I thought it was right. I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to be the best person I could be. I made plenty of mistakes. But I was always wanting to do what I could to help people, because I love people and I love being involved in people's lives. And so that just became a thing it wasn't a steady arc. I wasn't always a pastor. I would be a pastor in the church, and that would kind of dissolve, or we'd do something, and I would be in my own business or have a job. But it was always woven through my life. I was always, and if I wasn't on staff at a church, I was always involved in what they call lay ministry, leading small groups, leading men's ministry, prayer meetings, whatever. I was never like casually a casual churchgoer. I was always involved in the midst of all of it.
So when Christians now try to say, well, Dave Warnock, he probably just he was never really a Christian.
Yeah, I've heard that. My response to that is this, and it's real simple. If I was never a real Christian, a true Christian, then nobody is.
Yeah,
There's two responses I have to that, because nobody could have given it more than me. I gave it everything. I tried. I repented. I once fasted 21 fucking days without eating, because I thought it was God calling me to be closer to him. And if I wasn't a true Christian, I'll say, yes, I wasn't, because there aren't any Christians. It's not a thing. It's people who think they're Christians. They think they have a relationship with a deity, but they don't. They're just in this club.
Right. So, yep. Hit the nail on the head. And I'll ask you this, and I'll try to frame this correctly. If not, just ask me and I'll clarify. But I feel like when I talk to individuals like you and others, that especially ones that had really dove all the way into it and were dedicated to the faith, to the cause, that a lot of them that I talk to now are better, quote unquote, Christians, are doing the Christian things that Christians are supposed to be doing. They're actually better at it now than they were when they're there. What I mean by that is, the Bible says to be all things to all men, and being selfless and being kind and being generous and doing it without expecting a payment or a repayment. How do you feel you would align with that?
Well, I've said before that I believe that I'm more moral now as an atheist than I was as a Christian. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying I'm a better person. I think we are who we are, and we're all trying to do the best we can, unless you're a sociopath or a narcissist, Donald Trump. But most of us are trying to do good, and we make mistakes, we get on the wrong paths, whatever. But as a Christian, I had categories for people. You were either right or wrong, good or bad, black or white, saved or lost. And I had ideas that certain people were lost and that were less than. And for instance, LGBTQ, I did not understand the truth of what that is. And so I would look at gay people as simply lost or misguided. I didn't hate them or wish they would die or go to hell. I just thought they were wrong, that they just had missed it, and that God could help them get right. Or if you were a Muslim, I'm sorry, you were just wrong. You're probably a good person, but as we know, that our righteousness is as filthy rags, and you can't good yourself to heaven. You have to be on the right side of the prayer. And so that, to me, as I look back, is not moral. That's not moral.
Correct.
That's me putting myself in a higher category than another group of people. And now I don't do that. We're all just humans, and we're all doing the best we can, and I'm no better than anyone else.
Bingo. Everybody take notes. Hope everybody's got their pen and paper.
There'll be a test later.
We're attending classes right now. So, all right. So, saved ministry, and then how long were you in the ministry?
Oh, off and on. I mean, probably cumulative about 15 years of my 30-something years as a Christian. I was long gaps where I wasn't in there, and then other times when I was on staff, and this and that and the other. Okay.
So all that you put all that time, energy, effort into that, then there comes a period or a day, I don't know, and then that's why we're going to get to this part of it here. What began to chip away at the wall of religion and faith? What did that process look like? What started to chip away, and what eventually made that wall fall down to where you're like, you know what, I just don't have a reason to believe in this?
Yeah, that's I've kind of put it that way as you said that, Oz. The reason to believe, I really I've summed it up several times by saying I just ran out of reasons to believe and ran out of excuses, or I quit making excuses for God's poor behavior. Throughout my life, there were times where I would doubt, as we all would say we did, when things would happen that I didn't have answers for, and questions would come up that I didn't have answers for, and things would happen that didn't fit within my paradigm of how things should be, how God should behave, how God should respond to certain situations, how God should answer certain prayers that he never, ever did. And there wasn't a single event, but there became more and more of a nagging sense that something was wrong. And when I came to the end of my last pastoral gig, I was living in a small town outside Nashville, and I'd gotten sideways with the pastor because he was a narcissist, and he and I didn't mesh well. And so when I ended that, when that came to an end, he turned my two daughters against me and their husbands. They were married. They're married. They're still married, but they were married to men who were kind of training to be ministers, and he turned them against me, and they essentially shunned me and my wife. And at that point, I thought, because I was still serving God, I was still a committed Christian, and I started reaching out, saying, God, why can't you help me with this? I've been doing everything I could for you. I couldn't get help from the denomination I was in, other local pastors, and I said, I finally was thinking one day, probably praying, I can't get anybody help to get my daughters back. I can't even get your help, God. What good are you? Why can't you come through? And I realized he can't. He's not there. It was just like this awakening. And so I spent the next year and a half, truly researching what I believed, why I believed it, the origins of the Bible, the origins of Christianity, reading books that didn't come from an apologetic viewpoint, but from a real questioning viewpoint. And really, after a year and a half or so of that, and really examining the Bible on my own, and literally on a yellow legal pad, writing out side by side passages from the New Testament that contradicted one another. And I finally said, this is bullshit. And for me, the Bible was everything. It was the thing that I hinged my faith on. And when I came to the conclusion that the Bible was just a man-made document, then all the other dominoes fell really quickly.
That's interesting. That's why I share. We'll go through my whole process, but it was going home, getting a brand new Bible that didn't have my highlights and notes and and all that, and starting from Genesis 1 and reading it without I call it the Jesus juice, without the indoctrination, without the lenses that mom and dad gave me or pastor gave me. So,
right.
Yep. So it's very similar, but I can't remember who said it, but they said that the Bible, the number one atheist maker. When read with that. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because I know you did for a long time, 30-something years of my life. I read it and didn't have, and then when first time I heard Matt Delhoney, and I can't remember who was on with him, and was talking about slavery and abuse in the Bible. I'm like, that's not there. So I went and got my Bible and opened up to what he's talked to. I was like, son of a bitch. Yeah, it's there. No, I appreciate you sharing that, Dave. So the walls come down, and you find yourself, like you said, that kind of aha moment. And it was, I don't know how it was for you, but it was like almost everything illuminated. Like I looked at people different. I looked at life different. Everything just looked different, at that point. But you have that moment now, with family, you have now people that were a part of your church that you led them, right? And you communicated to them and gave them life advice and guidance based on this book. What did those relationships look like once you walked away?
Well, it was difficult. I'll be honest. I came to the end of my faith and realized it wasn't true, and I did not know a single human being on the planet that I could relate with, that I didn't know anybody I could talk to about it. I felt completely alone, completely disoriented, and it was traumatic. Um, I felt obligated to tell my family and friends that I no longer could identify as a Christian. And I wrote a letter to a lot of people. I sat down, had individual meetings. I sat down with each of my daughters, my son, of course, my wife at the time. She had had gone through it with me, so she knew that it was an authentic search on my part. That it wasn't just me, not getting a parking spot that I prayed for, but it was a legitimate crisis that I went through. And many of my friends decided to move on, and didn't want to have anything to do with me anymore. Some maintained that I've still got friends now from those days, who I would still call friends. And my position on that is, if I can be my authentic self with you, then we can be friends. If you need me to change and be different around you, then we have nothing to work with here.
Yes.
So it was difficult. I felt very alone. I didn't know anyone. I reached out. I searched on the internet trying to find people who'd lost their faith. I found Dan Barker and some others got connected with the Clergy Project and reached out to them and got connected with them, became a member of that organization, and eventually became a board member. And it's a nonprofit organization for clergy who've lost their faith. And so that was my first connection with like-minded people. And through that, I met some people locally in Nashville who were part of the Clergy Project. We would begin to meet and have coffee or have drinks, or begin to form a new community. And that's kind of how I got on my feet, so to speak.
No, that's awesome. Real quick for a comment on that. Paul Camish, thank you for the $4.99. Oz asked Dave how we can find the song about him. What would Dave do?
Yeah, I saw that comment. By the way, I see the comments, and thank you for your comments. I'm not able to respond because I can't do two things at once. And so, yeah, I've had several songs written in the last year or so, and I think that what would Dave do? Geez, go to my website. I think the links to all the stuff like that are on there somewhere. I apologize that I don't have a ready answer for that. Or Let's Live Like Dave Does, or what would they? There's several songs. One called Dying Out Loud. I don't know. I think they're on my website. There are links to them. You can find them that way.
Awesome. Do you? Is it you performing them or somebody else?
No, other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Ian Davenport threw up a $5 super sticker there. Thank you, Ian, for that as always, my man. And Eddie Kroom in the house. We'll just go ahead and shout a couple people out since we've been neglecting the chat room. Sean Alexander, Grumps, Kyle, Aunt Jer, Eddie Kroom de la Kroom.
Hey, Aunt Jer. Hey, Kyle.
Your local atheist, Atheist Mo, Kyle Brewer, Atheist Comment, Simply Secular. And I'm probably going to get to everybody. Loki's in the house. Loki's in the house. What's up, everybody? Simply Secular, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming as always. And we'll circle back around that at the end when the murderous one comes for Q&A. But I tried for so many years to pray the gay away. Fun fact, it's all bullshit.
Yep.
Yes.
You mentioned some of my church people. Some of the most gratifying moments I've had in the last few years, because I've been an atheist now for about 10 years, a little more. And for the most part of that, I was just quiet. I just was doing my insurance business, and I wasn't what you call an atheist activist. I wasn't traveling and speaking. It was only the last couple of years after the diagnosis that I started being more vocal, and because I just ran out of fucks, But I kind of kept low key, but as I've become more vocal and out there more, I've had more people find me, so to speak, and I've heard from several people who were former church members that have found me on different shows or heard me, and they've contacted me, and either they're still Christians and want to connect with me and engage, or they've also left the faith and wanted to say, hey, I wanted to chat with you because, yeah, me too.
Me too. Yeah.
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 And that's been pretty interesting. I've enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'll share one story real quick. I didn't see his name in there, but he's got like 40 kids, so he jumps in when he can. But my buddy Nate, he goes by NateDawg in here. He and I have known each other for about 20 years, and we'd lost a connection for a while, and he had found me on Facebook again, and then saw what TART was doing, and he called me one day, and we probably talked for like 2 hours on the phone.
Yeah.
And he was like, tell me about this. Well, what about this? And back and forth. Well, now he's like part of our community. He's been on a couple shows now, as a guest, and is out there, trying to normalize atheism with us, and I think, those stories are awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Now to kind of switch gears here a little bit, Dave, if we can, since walking away from the faith, and obviously the trying to figure out, okay, who's going to stick around, who's not, that kind of thing. I remember that in and of itself is can be hurtful. It can just wear you down, as far as, emotionally, mentally. But Dave, you went to a doctor's office, and you received news that just about any of us and all of us are going to get slapped in the face. It's going to change our life, right? It's flat out what's going to happen. Take as long as you want on this, and please share with myself and the ones listening. Going to the doctor. What was your diagnosis? What does that look like for you going ahead?
Prior to that, I was just living my best life, enjoying life, living my 20s and my 60s, and having, just my marriage didn't survive my deconstruction of my faith, and so I left that a few years back, and just was moving on, kind of rebooted my life, and so then I started having these weird symptoms that I didn't know what they were. Primarily, initially loss of strength in my fingers. I was having trouble writing certain things and certain, like buttoning buttons and opening things, and I thought something's going on with my hands. I thought maybe I have carpal tunnel. Maybe I'm just getting old and soft. I started working out more, and over the course of a year or so, the symptoms got worse, and I decided I better go to a doctor and see what's going on. So long story short, the doctor referred me to a neurologist. I had a lot of tests done, and then finally got the penultimate test called an EMG that is very conclusive and immediate. And he told me I have ALS, and that's called Lou Gehrig's disease, more commonly known. It's a motor neuron disease that is fatal. There's no cure. The prognosis is 3 to 5 years from the onset of symptoms or diagnosis. They play with that a little bit, but it's different in everyone. I got that diagnosis February 26th of 2019, so coming up on 2 years. I probably have symptoms a year before that, so I probably had ALS for almost 3 years. I found out recently, my girlfriend and I were at a neurologist appointment a few months ago, and he told me that I have a strain of ALS that is going to mostly stay in my arms for a long time, which is where the symptoms are. Loss of strength in my arms, but not in my mouth or my legs yet. As you can see, I still can talk. And I can walk fine, and I've still got good mobility in a lot of ways and good independence and functionality. But this particular strain of ALS is a little bit longer lifespan than most. We've met people who've gotten diagnosed and been dead in 6 months.
Wow.
It can go that fast.
Wow.
So in terms of the kind of ALS I could have, I probably have the best kind. But there's no cure, there's no treatment. It will gradually get worse, where I'll lose the ability to do more and more things until it eventually goes to your tongue and breathing parts of your body where you can't breathe, and that's how you die.
Okay. Well, before I say anything else, Dave, I remember I remember where I was sitting, the room I was in, the first time that I heard you speak and share your story online, and it was when I was still gaining knowledge, and going through things, and heard it, and your bravery and your willingness to not be, not let it silence you, and not just take it as a knockout punch and keep going. And your resilience is remarkable. It's amazing, and I know the entire community does. But the Atheist Roundtable, we salute you in any way we can. Help, be there. Be a supporter, whatever. We're there.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that, Austin.
Yep, not a problem. And in that, I can't. I've never been in that position, Dave, and I hope that, myself and anybody else that doesn't have to sit in that chair in that room and receive news like that. But for you, and I'm sure you felt the same way, that, going into that, like, well, I expect to hear this, but what, getting that news, what did that, as an atheist, what did that feel like? What were the emotions? How did that feel?
It was a tough day. I had, I coming to the letting go of Christianity, I'd come to the conclusion that this life is all we have. And I had, when I rebooted my life, probably back in 2016, I really began to live, I was 61, 62, and I thought, you know what? I don't have a lot of years. I don't know how many I have, but I want to live on the best way I can. And I want to do all the things that I want to do. I want to live life on my terms, not dictated by a deity or other people's expectations. I had realized I was letting other people write my story. And I decided at that point I was going to take the pen back and write my own story and write my own ending.
That's good.
And I began to live by the phrase carpe the fucking diem. And it has become kind of the mantra of the dying out loud thing. And it was an attitude I had before I got the diagnosis. And when I got the diagnosis, I just kind of mashed the pedal down on that attitude. It took me a week or so to kind of get my bearings, and I decided, I thought I would just keep working in the insurance business. It was going well. And I said, no, I'm going to need to retire from that. I want to travel as much as I can, and I want to get everything out of life that I can. That became my attitude pretty quickly. Some friends of mine encouraged me to move in with them. I was living by myself in an apartment. And at that point, we didn't know how long I had. We didn't know if I had a year, 2 years, what. We didn't know how fast it would go. So I thought, you know what, I don't need to be on my own. I need to be with people that can help me when I need help and that sort of thing. But quickly, that kind of modified or morphed into the dying out loud thing. There's the thing on the screen. Perfect timing, y'all. My friend Marie, who's my manager now, was in town for something, and we were literally moving things out of my apartment, and I was moving and with friends, and I was kind of giving things away and getting rid of stuff because I thought, I don't need this stuff anymore. And she started asking me what I wanted to do, and would I want to talk on podcasts? Would I want to travel and speak? And I said, yeah, sure, that sounds great. Let's do that. So she started reaching out to all kinds of places, and we started doing podcasts, YouTube shows. As you know, I've been on Matt's show and Seth Andrews and all of them probably by now. Well, not all of them. I'm just now on this one, so there's always more. But we started doing that, and it just kind of became a thing. And we called it Dying Out Loud, and we started booking travel around the country, around the world, actually. And I just really loved being able to turn this thing and make something good out of something that was looking pretty bad, to be honest. And I was glad that I was able to reach people and connect with people in ways that really matter.
Absolutely. And yeah, I was before we all jumped on here, I was talking to my wife about the show, and we were talking about some of the questions and that kind of thing, and we were talking about the movement that is dying out loud, which we'll get into in a minute, because I love that. I love that title. I love how you've titled that. So we'll pause, or as Apostle Mike would say, we'll put a pin in that. And we'll come back to it here in a minute. When you're in that room and you go away, and let's say the next week or so, was there ever a moment or even a brief passing of time that, Dave, you ever asked yourself, maybe faith is the answer? Maybe God's the answer. Did that ever pop up?
Yeah, I said I had a little time with. I said, God, I was just kidding about that atheist stuff. Let's tap into that. Come on, big guy. No, it really never did. My departure from faith was so complete and so total. It never occurred to me for a second that I'd messed up, or that maybe I could bargain my way back into his good graces or anything like that. When they say there's no atheists in foxholes, that's just bullshit. Because I've been in the foxhole for a couple of years now, and I'm an atheist. I don't see any credible evidence for a God.
Yeah, that was the one I was all day as I was trying to put my notes together. I was like, I'm eager to ask that, because I just feel like, even whether you're an atheist for a couple months, or like you said, 10 years, once you understand that there's not the evidence to support the claim, and it's not real, and it's not there, I just can't. Whether it's something minor or a position that you've found yourself in, where it's like, that still doesn't make God real. But I felt like that question has to be asked just to solidify that that's the case.
Yeah.
And then, do you feel like? Well, first of all, I think I have to ask this first. When you were still a Christian, how did you view death? Just before you ever had this diagnosis, anything? How did you view death as a Christian?
Well, everything I tried to handle as a Christian would be according to what I considered the Word of God, the Bible, and the Bible is pretty clear in its teaching that death is not. There's several passages that are weird. The final enemy that shall be destroyed is death. And through fear of death, we're held in bondage our whole lives. So death is viewed as a negative thing. And although the Bible also teaches that if you're a believer, well, if you're not a believer, when you die, you go to hell. If you are a believer, when you die, you go to heaven. So death is just a pause. It's like an exit ramp. And you either exit to hell or heaven. It's not really, there's no finality to it. And so you view death as just a new life, a different kind of living. There's no real ending of it. So what I found after my diagnosis is that the Christians in my life treated me way different than the atheist. The Christians didn't know how to deal with the ALS because they knew me as an atheist. They know me as an atheist, so they didn't know how to respond to it. And so I think, in defense of that, they just kept their distance. Whereas the atheists were very present, and they were very just involved in saying, I want to be with you in this. What can I do? Let me be there. The atheist, Christians, oddly enough, and this is my observation, are afraid of death. And I don't understand it. But it's something that I think I've seen firsthand. They just don't want to deal with it, because in their view, death doesn't even exist, because you're just pausing and then you go to heaven.
Yeah, this is just the opening act, according to especially evangelical Christianity. Real quick,
and because of that, it minimizes this life.
Yeah. Oh, what's the point in living this one? Because you're here, I guess, to live.
And
this.
You miss a lot of what life is because you're focused on the next life. And that's a tragedy to me.
Yep. Real quick, Paul Camish, another 499. Thank you. Oz, I don't cry much. I didn't cry when my father died. How I love very much when I listened to Dave's story. I'm so glad I was on my own.
That's sweet.
And Paul Camish again, no atheist in foxholes is annoying. I've been in foxholes. I've been shot at many times. God was the furthest from my mind. Yeah. Yep. Thank you for, all three now. Paul Camish, appreciate it. I had a question that it wasn't part of my notes, and now I lost it. In knowing that, and how we view death and afterlife via the Christian faith, how do you see it now? You lightly touched on it a little bit ago, but how do you view death and a possible afterlife now, Dave?
I don't see any evidence for an afterlife. If there is one, I'll find out soon. I'm not worried about it. I think I've learned to not worry a whole lot about stuff we can't do anything about. I'm focused on now. How do I live my life now? What do I do with the days I have? What do I do with the moments that I have? And so that's what I'm trying to soak up as much as I can. I just want to get the most out of this life that I can. And so Bevan and I are traveling when we can. My girlfriend, Bevan, we went skydiving the other day. We jumped out of an airplane. Went to the Grand Canyon. I'm doing the things I can do. The COVID has greatly inhibited that, but I'm determined to get some more moments before I'm done. But as far as death and an afterlife, I'm not concerned. Death is simply the natural result of living. And I want to be in a position where I'm more concerned with the quality of my days than the quantity of them. And that sounds like a cliche, but it's really how I approach life and death right now.
No, and that's fair. And I think if most people adopted that perspective, I think quality of life would be, would be better. You enjoy the moment, enjoy the day, and not, over worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, next week. But this last question here, and then we'll switch gears again, have a little bit of fun before we bring the killer on here. Dave, what to you, what does dying out loud mean? What is that?
It's kind of a play on words that's catchy and cute. But it's, and I've got, by the way, we've got merch.
Oh, nice.
It's links on the website. That's a fun story too, because there was this guy that the whole WWDD thing, what would Dave do, became a thing. That's a whole other story. But this guy sent me a message and said, "Hey, I got one of your t-shirts." And he sent me a picture with a WWDD t-shirt. What would Dave do? And I said to Marie, we don't have t-shirts, do we? And so we decided we better get t-shirts. Dying out loud is really more about living out loud, if you will. It's about finding the moments, making the most of them, living your best life, not letting life pass you by, doing being the one that writes your own story. Too many of us let someone else write our story. And we're the only ones that can control what kind of life we live. And if you're not living the life you want to live, change it. You're the only one that can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the first time I heard you talk about it, even till up till today, when once I knew the story behind it, I thought it was incredible, because you said it's a play on words, obviously. But as you're going through this, so many people again would take that as a knockout punch, and they would their quality of life would dip. Their getting those moments in, like you're talking about, would go away, or at least minimize. And I was like, this is this is amazing. And I hope, this was years ago, before I ever thought I'd ever even meet or talk to you, but, I was like, man, I hope this guy gets to talk to as many people as possible, because more people need to hear this. It needs to be in front of as many people as possible. So again, thank you for having that position, taking that position, and doing it really loud, Dave. We're doing it really loud.
Thanks.
And then before we bring the murder guy on here, oh God, oh God, oh God. I'll tell everybody in the chat, start getting your questions into the chat area here. And while you do that, before we bring Steve on here, I just wanted to talk a little evangelical church with you. Just have a little Holy Ghost fun.
Hallelujah. Let's pray in tongues.
I'll sing in tongues if you sing in tongues. So what is your looking back at it now, what's one of your like funniest like that in the spirit Holy Ghost stories?
God. You know what? I was in the midst of all that bullshit, and I taught myself to speak into. I can still do it now. I did it on the Cognitive Dissonance podcast, and those guys just lost their shit. But I think the funniest thing I've seen it all. I never got. I shouldn't say that because I never was in any of the snake handlers groups. But I was in one meeting one time at a Pentecostal church early on in my walk with the Lord, and you heard the term holy rollers, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so if people don't know, that's when you get so caught up in the spirit, so to speak, and you're just out of your mind, and you literally start rolling on the floor, back and forth, like someone's rolling up carpet, and you're rolling on the floor up at the altar. And this guy did that, and his glasses came off, and he rolled over them and broke them. And then somebody prayed for him to be healed so he wouldn't need his glasses. And as he was walking out, he stumbled over a chair and fell down. And I remember I believed all that, but then I thought, okay, this is crazy. This is crazy. What about you?
I was just going to say, what a cool could say. There's levels to this. So there's levels to the extreme of evangelical Christianity. I was there where like the guest ministers that came to the church I grew up in were like Rod Parsley, Kenneth Copeland. I was like, woohoo! Like we were up here, and I saw some pretty crazy stuff. But the one that like it's not. I seen plenty of the rolling around and all. I remember all that. But one of the moments I remember still, I think I was probably 12, 13 years old. Rod Parsley was at our church, and he's preaching. Well, he comes down off the stage and stands up on the first pew. Like gets up on the pew, reaches in his coat pocket, his suit coat pocket, and gets a cigarette and lights a cigarette. And he starts talking about how basically you can do what you want to do. You can smoke, you can drink, whatever. But eventually God's going to bring you back was the moral of his story. Oh, wow. I'm paraphrasing. That's 20 years ago. But I remember him sitting there. I'm like, 12 or whatever. I'm like, did he just light a cigarette in church? Like my mom would kill me.
Rod's a real,
he's a whippersnapper, as my grandpa would say. Yeah, yeah, he's a treat. So see, it's ones like him that my mom was a music pastor, so I would see these guys. I would see these guys like off stage.
Yeah,
like we'd go out to eat with them afterwards.
Right.
My brother and I would go spend the night at the pastor's house because they had kids that were our age. I saw these guys and gals off stage, and can I tell you? A lot of them are as, if not more, batshit crazy when they're not on the stage. If that tells you anything.
Well, Kenneth Copeland was going to blow the COVID away. I don't know what he thinks about that now, but remember that thing, a video where I worked at a Christian youth camp way back, and his son was one of my counselors, and his son was just a piece of shit. His son was and his son squirted oil on me from the go-karts one time. So I threw him in the lake. And I remember Kenneth saying, "You shouldn't have thrown my son in the lake." And I said, "Well, your son shouldn't have squirted me with oil."
Yeah. I'll give one more. This one wasn't at our church. My mom took us to, I think it was 2. two different Benny Hinn crusades.
Oh boy.
And I think it was the first one we went to. I remember that there's all these people lined up that you could tell were actually like ill, like, wheelchairs. But for some reason they kept bringing all these sons of bitches from this aisle way back here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And when I got older, I was like, oh, now I know what you're doing, you little hustler.
Yeah.
But I remember they do it, and he started doing that jacket thing where he'd take his jacket off and like whip his jacket, and like 40 rows in, everybody's passing out, and falling. So yeah, that was some craziness. But final question from me, Dave, and this one's actually a pretty serious one. Have you ever seen the inside of a murder shed?
Inside of what?
Inside of a murder shed?
Murder shed?
Yeah.
Can't say.
Well, how's it going, everybody? So I just wanted to share a quick story. I met a guy at the Murder and Mayhem Ball this summer. I think you guys all remember that. He killed a dentist with an axe, but somehow he was only charged with manslaughter. It was actually ruled an accidental killing. How's it going, Oz?
What's up, buddy?
That's right. You are a drummer, aren't you?
Yes. The boom to the bap.
Bamp to the boop and the boots and cats and boots and cats.
Oh, my daughter loves it when I do that. Boots and cats and boots and cats.
Cats and boots.
Like my new Nirvana shirt.
So, that's a nice shirt.
Little in utero.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. So your daughter is a dancer?
It depends on the day.
That's fair.
Yeah. So how was the Murder and Mayhem Ball though?
It's always a blast.
A blast.
Yeah.
Does everybody leave safely? Is it like everybody treats each other as equal killers there, or
there's kind of like an unspoken rule when it comes to the Murder and Mayhem Ball. I mean, the people that go there, let's just say you don't really want to mess with them. It might come back and bite you.
So you have to worry about it after the fact.
Yes. Yep. These are not the types of people that get into fist fights.
So not street fighters. We're talking about machetes and axes and.
We'll just say some night you might go to bed and some morning you might not wake up.
That sounds threatening.
It's barrels of fun.
No,
how's it going, Dave? What was that?
Is it the sealable barrels? Like so
sealable?
Yeah, so you got to throw them underwater.
The kind that you put monkeys in.
Okay.
You know, all those barrels of monkeys and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. What's up, Dave?
Hey, I'm glad I got a little break there. I had to go pee.
No peeing in the murder shed. That's rule number 3.
That murder shed's scary looking.
Well, you have nothing to fear in the murder shed, Dave.
Okay.
Don't you worry. So I've got a question from Aunt Jer about death with dignity. So do you have to move to take advantage of that, or is it legal where you are? If you were to choose.
Hey, how you doing, girl? Actually, I live right now in North Carolina. I was in Tennessee. Neither of those states allow you to die with dignity. They want you to die a slow, painful death. according to when God wants to take you, apparently. I work with a group called the Final Exit Network. There's a link on my website. And that's a group that allows people in my situation a little more control. In other words, I don't have to live. They help people in my situation have some options so that I can, if it gets to where it's just too bad, I can end things on my own with their, not with their help, but they kind of show me how the best ways are to do that. They have a legal team that helps you line everything up legally, so that you've got all your affairs in order, so to speak. But they're a great organization. It's a nonprofit with volunteers. And so it's kind of an answer for those of us who don't have a death with dignity law in our state. And in fact, most of the states that have a law like that are very limited in their, in other words, if I had a law like that in North Carolina, I probably would never use it, because one of their rules is that you have to be within 6 months of death, signed by 2 doctors. Well, with ALS, that means I'm in pretty bad shape by then, and I probably won't get to that point.
I would say in some cases you're just not cognitively there enough to be able to legally make that decision.
Dementia or Alzheimer's, then you've got a whole other element in play.
Right. Right. No, I'm definitely an advocate for death with dignity, and it just amazes me that people aren't on board with it. It just makes sense across the board.
I think it's because of the religious underpinning of the country. I've been on a couple shows where we had Q&A with people, and their attitude was, you can't play God. You can't, that's God's choice when to take you. Well, then God's a dick. If he wants to make you suffer until he's ready to say, okay, that's enough suffering, now you can die. And my response also to that attitude is that every time you go to the doctor or have surgery, you're playing God.
Yep. And not only that, but who's to say that you should be using anesthesia then for surgery?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Got a question here from Kyle Brewer.
Hey,
if
Kyle.
you could choose a location rent-free with an unlimited supply of one thing, where and what would they be?
Okay, that's Kyle. I gotta hand it to you, bro. I've been asked a ton of questions on shows like these. I've never been asked that. You win. It would be somewhere warm with a beach and my woman Bevan with me and an unlimited supply of bourbon and cigars. I'm a happy man at that point.
Dave, we're pretty closely matched on that, although I would probably switch that out with scotch or wine.
Okay.
I've recently gotten into wine, so.
I'm sorry.
I've even transitioned into the whites already. It's unbelievable.
There's a beach with a cigar.
There it is. Hang that one on your wall, Dave.
That's awesome.
Got another question here. There are a few times that I went to a youth church. My friends and I would always say that the preacher had the ability to pull thoughts out of our minds and talk about them. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, let me guess. He probably said, like, you are under a lot of stress and there's a lot of pressure at home and someone you love is sick and you're praying for them. I mean, I've seen in plenty of meetings where prophets would prophesy such things, and it's always generic enough where it can apply to almost anyone in the room. It's much like palm readers or fortune tellers you'd go to. That's my thought on it.
Yep. And I can say, so I was in Boy Scouts, right? And we stayed at a church, or we used churches a lot to have our meetings and things like that. So I often ended up going to church services, things like that. And every single time that I went to a church service, there was something that was helpful for me to hear or that I took away from. Right. And it was always asserted to me that was because that was God speaking to me. But when you really analyze it, most of those things are just so vague that it applies to everybody.
It does.
At some point.
it's so generic that it can apply to almost anyone in the room.
Yep. I got a special question from a very special friend. Jim Benton would like to know. Please tell me you are not a Carolina fan, question mark.
Jim, I'm happy to say that I'm not. I've recently transplanted here to be with my girlfriend. So I don't have any deep roots in Carolina or deep ties to any Carolina teams. I must say, I grew up in Arkansas. And when you grow up in Arkansas, you're going to always be a Razorback. It's just how it is.
And Jim, I'll tell you what, as a representative of TART, and I can say that if anybody wants to argue with this on the TART team, they'll be meeting me in the Murdershed. If Dave was a fan, he would not have been invited on the show. So I can assure you of that.
That's funny.
Well, surprisingly, that is all the questions that I have right off the top for Q&A. But I got to say, Dave, it's a pleasure to meet you. And thanks for stopping by the Murdershed, where answers get questioned. All right, Cousin Tony, here you go. Gosh, your skin and bones. So hungry, I'm sure. Oh.
Oh,
What is the deal with the Murdershed? What's the origin of that whole thing?
Pasta Mike is a brilliant character developer. So yeah,
that's my birth given name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, his mom called him that.
Murdershed. Okay.
Yep. But yeah, Pasta Mike started, and it's stuck, and now it's everybody's favorite segment, favorite character. But he does a great job with that segment. And before we do go, I just wanted to give a shout out to Pasta Mike. The new transitions, the intro you saw, all of that is via Pasta Mike. He's a genius. He's a genius out here, and he's killing it. So thank you, Pasta Mike, for the hard work on that and making us look way better than we are. But Dave, we appreciate you coming by. And the last question I do have for you before we wrap, is there anything that you'd like to tell the folks that are maybe they start to question, they become skeptical of their belief, of their faith? Is there anything that you would like to say to them?
Yeah, curiosity is a good thing. Questioning is a good thing. Do not beat yourself up for questioning. The Christian church does not like questions, does not like curiosity. They like certainty. And if you're questioning, trust your instinct, trust your gut. Don't trust a person. Don't put your faith in a person. Trust yourself. You got what you need inside you.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And the Blazing Wizard Pope just became a new member of our YouTube channel. Thank you, Wizard. Appreciate it. We have the Wizard and we have Oz. We got good things going here.
How long, Wizard of Oz? How long have you been out of faith, Oz?
I was just thinking about that today. It's almost 4 years now, because it was about 3 years when we started the channel. So roughly 3.5, 4 years, something like that. So
well, good for you getting out here and being an activist and making a difference. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. And it's the support from the ones on our team too that have pushed me, help motivate me. So it's I owe a lot to them for the support and everything. But again, thank you, Dave, so much. Everybody, Dave's information is in the description. And, check out YouTube, Facebook, website. Go check out the music. I didn't know about the music. Go check out the music, and go check out the he's got the gear. He's got the Dying Out Loud gear. Go check that out. But thanks again. And I remember we have the debate tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern time on the 10 Commandments. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. Another TART live show, and we'll see you next time.